Thank you so much for joining our third and final in our series of Cratus Group Election Insights. Today, we are going to be talking about the predictions for the elections. As you would have seen, there are an extensive amount of polls. So how can we trust the polling that we see and key figures that are likely to be leaving Parliament? So I'll hand over to James Goldstone, who's our director in the London planning team, who's going to be talking through all of these insights. And as ever, if you would like to ask a question, please do unmute yourself and I'll come over to you. James, over to you.
Thank you, Vanisha. Let me just share my screen. Just to we are doing a webinar one midday today with Focal Data, and this is basically just a preview of what you'd be likely to expect then. So that should be able to see that.
Yes.
Yes, good. So just talking about the final week, you'll be familiar with the polls, and looking at this graph here, obviously the area that we care about is to the right. You can see that exactly what we predicted would happen, that the Labour share of the vote would decrease. We would have expected a tightening of the polls. However, because of the Conservatives' reduction in their share of the vote, splitting off to Reform, the actual Labour lead has remained pretty much the same as it did when the election was called. This is perhaps a slightly challenging graph for the main two parties, but I think if we look at the polls just since the election were called here, you can see that actually what has happened is a rather gradual tightening, probably less than what we would have seen in previous elections. Reform seem to have plateaued, and Tories have also seemed to have hit this kind of 20% floor. But this is based on poll averages. Now, there have been over 120 polls since the 22nd of May, and about 10% of them are what we call MRP, which we'll be talking a little bit more with Focal Data. If you take away the kind of outliers, some of these ones right at the bottom, right at the top, Labour's lead has been consistently between 15 and 25%. But since Farage has entered the race around about here, only two polls have had the Conservatives above 25%. And that's Savanta and More in Common. And both of those pollsters have the Tories down to their joint second lowest currently. What's also really important is roughly about here, mid to late June, postal votes dropped and significant numbers of voters will have already cast their ballots. We're going to talk just a little bit about polling misses in the future, but that's something that we didn't have in 92 to the extent that we have today, where or even 2017, where last minute changes can really affect the outcome of the race when so much of the voting has already taken place. We're talking about maybe as much as 15% of votes could be cast already. Just looking at seat predictions specifically. Now, we've been saying for a while that the likely outcomes for the Conservatives are, at best, a 1997 style result, and at worst, a wipeout. Now that seems, well, not a wipeout, but certainly making the Lib Dems potentially on par with the Conservatives. I don't think so. Find Out Now electoral calculus is the only one that has the Lib Dems ahead of Conservatives. It also has Reform 118. I find this particular seat prediction slightly hard to swallow. But if you look at the consensus of the majority, the lowest one, More in Common, has it that's basically 97. Slightly less for Labour than Labour won in 97, but certainly less for the Conservatives. Partly because of the higher than historic numbers for the SNP. But if you look at these figures, if that's the one kind of 1997 figure, and then we have some very, very challenging numbers for the Conservatives up here, at this point, we're in we're in a how big is the wipeout going to be place, and there's nothing in the recent polls that have come out in the last 24 hours, 72 hours that suggests otherwise. For those who might be skeptical, if I give the kind of fictional seat of Leicester Coastal, it illustrates just how punishing first past the post is. So let's say in 2019, you have Labour, hovering around the 25s, a safe Tory seat of 55, Lib Dems around 15, and others on 5. Now, Labour do not have in a world where Nigel Farage runs and creams off, a good 45% of this vote here for reform. Labour need to do very little to get over the line, as we can see here. Conservatives, if the blue and teal is split, Labour maybe with a few more tactical votes of the Lib Dems, who weren't really offering a tactical kind of offer in Leicester Coastal in 2019. Labour only need to inch up ever so slightly, and there are some seats where we do not have stonking great majorities of this much, but we still see this effect. And this is how, on polling that may even see Labour struggle to break 40%, they could have a larger majority than Blair did in the low 40s, 1997. And we have had some people ask about polling misses. I've just mapped here some of the polling misses. Historically, we have, 92 is probably the most consequential here. 97 did quite significantly actually overestimate Labour's lead. 2010, we could see that the Lib Dems were overestimated. 2015, not too dissimilar from 2015, but the crucial thing was Tories were always slightly ahead, and they were much more ahead than we figured. And also, actually, it's not as steep as what we have for 92. 2017, the final polls didn't quite capture Labour's trend that was moving in the right direction. And 2019 was actually quite stable, relatively. So looking at where the polls are today, if we take the worst miss of recent modern electoral history, 1992, we would still get something like this. And based on this numbers, you could have a Labour majority scratching 3 figures fairly comfortably on the new boundaries. So even if we had a polling miss, this is actually slightly worse because I think it's about 4.5 in 92, and this assumes a 5% polling miss. We would be comfortably likely to expect Labour to be the largest party with a workable majority, certainly, and crucially, there are more postal votes now than there were in 1992. So even if there were to be some last minute changes, they wouldn't be captured. Looking ahead to Thursday night, I thought it would be worthwhile just talking about who is in danger, who is likely to go. So I think we have to say goodbye to some of these people, not really any on the kind of scale of Portillo. We have Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, Alex Chalk, Justice, Mark Harper, Transport, Dave Davis, the Welsh Secretary, Simon Hart, who's the Chief Whip, and Johnny Mercer, who's a very prominent Minister for Veterans. On current polling, these people have all lost their seats, and we'll be looking for other work. Now, in real danger, I think you'll have heard about Jeremy Hunt, who's under a significant challenge for the Lib Dems in Surrey Heath. We have Michelle Donnellan, the Science and Innovations Minister in Chippenham, and both of these two are under threat from the Lib Dems. Penny Mordaunt, who's the Lord President of the Council, Portsmouth North, under threat from Labour, as is Mel Stride, the DWP Secretary. Gillian Keegan here in Chichester under threat from the Lib Dems, as is Lucy Fraser in Ely and East Cams. And Victoria Prentice is the Attorney General, and we've got Andrew Mitchell, he of Plebgate, but the Deputy Foreign Secretary under threat from Labour. And then we have some people, we have some people who should be nervous. Oliver Dowden, Deputy PM, Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, Victoria Atkins, and interestingly, we've got Richard Holden, who was an MP for the North, who stitched up a nice Essex seat for himself in Billericay, and now he may be under threat from Labour, with Reform taking big chunks out of that vote. Basildon, Billericay, and Esther McVey, the Minister for Common Sense in Tatton, is also under threat from Labour. Though looking at the bottom, some of the reports of Rishi Sunak losing his seat, or Steve Barclay, we think that that's unfounded. That they will be safe and they'll be sticking around. And Kemi Badenoch, who's the bookies' favourite to run for the leadership, will stick around, as will Sunak allies Claire Coutinho, Laura Trott, and we also have Tom Tugendhat, who is rumoured to be considering a mull for running for the leadership. So do stay up. I think the ones that I think most interested in probably be Jeremy Hunt, but there are a few others that I think it would be surprising if all 5 of these individuals keep their seats. There'd have to be a bit of a polling miss for that to be the case. Finally, talking about what we recommend you do on election night. Obviously, it's up to you. If you want to do the all-nighter, it's fine, but do be aware that the majority or the plurality of votes in the hour are going to be between 3 and 4. What I would do, unless you want the kind of excitement of the election night, is stay up for the what is it called? The poll. What is it called? Does anyone want to help me out? I'm going complete blank. Exit poll. The BBC exit poll and has been very reliable in recent years, and will give you, if you go to sleep at 10:05, knowing that and waking up at 6, I think it'll be a fairly consistent result. If you want the drama, if you want to see, will Oliver Dowden go, will James Cleverly be under threat, then stick up through the night. I probably will be, but yeah, that's our kind of final point on the election, but we're very happy to take questions.
Okay, I'm gonna start off with a couple of questions. Obviously, you talked about the exit poll, and that's going to be the first sort of big moment of the election night where we have the clearest indicator of who we think will have won the general election. So, what are your predictions on the exit poll?
What do you think is going to happen? We have to hedge, I think, and it's a range. It is between, at best, for Labour Party, it's a 1997 style result, but there are significant other predictions that could have Labour on 50 seats more in terms of majority on that front. It's quite interesting. The Labour Party isn't that concerned. The Labour Party have had various plans in place for a strong majority, a good majority, a poor majority. They haven't really prepared for what the Tories have named a super majority, but it is on the cards. I'm probably not going to nail my colours to the mast. I am a Labour Party person and run elections, and I tend to find assuming the worst for my party keeps me in the best emotional health. So, and I think there is this odd situation where let's say Labour get like 5 less than what Blair did in 1997. I think the media would probably say, "Oh, you bottled it. It's the expectations game has been completely lost." But so we know Labour are going to be big. I think the key thing is that for the future, that's important is the extent of that reform to UKIP, reform Conservative split, because that will be very important for the future of the Conservative Party.
Thank you. I'm going to open the floor up to any questions. If you do have any questions, please do unmute yourself, and I'll come to you. Can't see anyone. Just looking. No? I'll continue asking questions. Oh, James, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just wondered whether you had any clarity at all on what you think they're going to be doing about housing policy, because it seems to me all very unclear. It's all very well saying we've got a terrible problem, but there seems to be very little clarity on what they might be doing.
Thank you, James. So I'm basically envisaging a 2-tier kind of policy framework. They will be the NPPF will have its most 2 recent updates effectively rescinded. So we'll go back to a December 2021 period. And that will be across the country. Labour believe that endless kind of consultations and tweaking of the NPPF is having a chilling effect on development, quite understandably, as policy shifts beneath developers' feet. And so they will want to limit the amount of impact on what I will just call generic, normal planning. Then there's the other tier, which is the new towns element. And that's where they will hope, what Labour hope will be a lot of action. They will set up what I believe, delivery vehicles or corporations that will be where Labour will want to focus their kind of communications. That things like OPDC or LLDC have seen in London have seen rapid developments there, crucially in areas where there's already lots of infrastructure. So Labour will make a lot of noise about their new towns policy fairly quickly. I would be surprised if we don't have a list of where these new towns are going to be before. I could see it happening basically the week after the local elections in May, so within 12 months. And that's going to receive a lot of attention. But elsewhere, NPPF, outside of new towns, it's going to be kind of the status quo, with the exception of some Greenbelt release as well. Labour don't have I don't think they're going to get to 1.5 million. I think Labour don't think they're going to get to 1.5 million. But what they're going to do when they're seeking re-election is run on the mantra, stick with us, the plan is working, we're getting Britain building again. And they'll have every single event, campaigning event in these kind of new towns where they hope to have some cranes, some diggers and shovels in the ground, hard hats, high vis, and that will be their photo ops. But they are quite realistic that the changes that need to happen are economic and to some extent outside of this government's hands.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, James. And I can see that you are unmuted. Did you want to ask a question?
Oh, well, I wanted to just sort of ask James, in 16 days' time, allegedly there's the King's speech. So the real opportunity, would you not think, is for Labour to uncover all their hard work at that time. So we've only got 16 days left before we find out what the real detail, the meat on the bones of all the manifesto policies with the King's speech. And housing, would you consider housing is going to be one of their flagship announcements in that?
Absolutely. The actual substance of the King's speech and what the King will get up and say probably will be less detailed itself than the manifesto. It will be the civil services report that comes out immediately afterwards, talking about giving a lot more flesh on the bone. However, the access talks between Labour and the civil service have been pretty meagre. I initially thought it was Rishi Sunak playing politics with it, but I understand now it's actually been Sue Gray who has been holding Labour back from having so this is the chief of staff to Keir Starmer and the kind of former Mandarin in the civil service who's on side with Keir. She has kept them from speaking with the civil service because she doesn't trust them. She observed the kind of mounting Martin case, chamocracy inside the civil service in Number 10, and she has been very reticent about sharing Labour's ideas. Now that is challenging because normally when you have a King's speech with the government in place, that kind of civil service report that explains what the King's speech will mean in greater policy detail has been worked up over months. And if we believe what we're being told, that the civil service are basically scratching around to work out what Labour are going to do. They've even been meeting, I think in March, they were meeting with the Fabians to try and get an understanding about what Labour might actually want to do. So yes, 16 days is a very short amount of time to really put these policies down on paper. So I would love it if we could have a much better understanding about what Labour are doing on housing afterwards, I fear it's not going to be as helpful as we might hope.
Thank you, Nick. Does anybody else have any other questions? James.
Do you mind if I ask another?
Well, sure.
What's your view on CGT, which everyone's worrying about?
I mean, it's been one of the taxes that they haven't ruled out raising, and you can see. I mean, they've been quite explicit about no income tax or VAT. The fact that capital gains is not among those is. I would say yes, indication that it's likely to be some raise. However, they have said that they want the UK to be competitive compared to the rest of the world. And if there were other countries that make big capital gains reductions, they would have a look at keeping things competitive. I've been saying for a while now, Rachel Reeves is going to be the most powerful chancellor in over 100 years. I think the time that we're really going to get a sense of what the next 4, maybe 5 years is going to look like is at her the first fiscal event that she does, her autumn budget. Obviously, we have a comprehensive spending review as well. That's going to be looked at. So I don't. A similar answer to what I've given to Nick. I don't think we're going to have major clarity on those types of policies until the budget. And I think we'll see some mood music in the run-up to that, which will give some indication. I would be presuming there would be some increase.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, well, it's more an observation. I think that when Gordon Brown was the Chancellor, another Chancellor that actually was better as a Chancellor and not the Prime Minister, he was very, very clear when he was in office about his 5-year view, because he liked to then, the following year, fit everything back into the context that he'd created. So actually, with the King's speech and with the fiscal events that will undoubtedly happen in the autumn, we will know probably what the 5-year plan is in quite a lot of detail, where we currently know very little in detail. But I'd be quite shocked if Rachel Reeves didn't set out everything she intends to achieve and how she's going to collect the money and how she's going to stimulate, because the markets will actually take quite a lot of convincing in medium term to actually do what she wants. So it's not that many months before we'll find out more detail and more consistent detail than possibly the current government.
I think that's right. I think that so much of Labour's plans are predicated on there being growth. If there is not growth, yes, Labour are in a very tricky position. Not least because we've seen from the polling that people are voting Labour in to fix the public realm, to fix NHS and schools and everything else. And if there is a growth, she will be punished for it. She won't be able to deliver on those things. So I think she is going to keep her cards relatively close to her chest, and that's it has been the cagiest Labour Party that I've had to deal with in my professional career and before, if I'm honest. They don't like to show their hand. Yeah, I would say that. I had another point to add, but it's jumped out of my head.
No worries. Thanks, James. Does anybody have any other questions? Can't see anyone. But James, did you want to talk a little bit more about the event with Vocal Data at 1 p.m. Sorry, at 12 p.m.
Yes, so we'll be joined by Focal Data, who are one of the providers of those MLP polls I showed earlier, and they're going to be doing a deep dive on what they're seeing, not just the polling and what we think the predictions are, but the type of voters that are moving across in much greater depth. That will be at midday today.
So yeah, we look forward for you joining us for that. If you would if you've not received the invite and you'd like to, I think we can put it in the chat. But there is no chat, sorry, can't do that. We'll circulate it to all the attendees.
Well, thank you, everyone. Hope to see you later. And otherwise, yeah, remember to bring ID.
Thank you.